I am a big Christopher Nolan fan, from movies such as Memento to the Batman trilogy, Inception, Dunkirk, etc. When I heard that he was going to have a new movie coming out called Oppenheimer this year, it was easily one of my most anticipated movies of the summer. I just got back from seeing it, and boy, it did not disappoint. Oppenheimer is about the physicist who led the team to design the atomic bomb during World War II that was used in Japan. Oppenheimer spends most of its time focusing on the physicist played by Cillian Murphy as opposed to actual making of the bomb itself. The story gives a little bit of history about what happens right before the war, and then as he was developing his theories and everything about how the government came to him in order to assemble a team to go out into the desert in order to spend several years working to put together the atomic bomb. That's really all you need to know about what's going on in the movie, because the highlights of the movie itself is what Christopher Nolan is known for. Number one, getting the maximum out of his actors. Every actor and actress did an amazing job in this movie, and it is a star-studded cast. As I was watching the movie, you would go, wait a minute, that's such and such. Wait a minute, that's such and such. And it would be these really small roles. I got to believe that when Christopher Nolan calls you up and says, do you want to be in my movie? You say yes. Even if you're an A-lister where you can lead your own movies, still to get a little bit of part in his must really be a big reward or a high accomplishment. Cillian Murphy absolutely killed it with his acting. In fact, he was in probably about 90% of the scenes in this 3-hour-long movie. But the person who really stole the show was Robert Downey Jr. One of the last things you may have seen him as is playing Tony Stark in Iron Man. However, this is a totally different role for him, and you really see the acting chops this guy has. But not just him, everybody else that shows up, such as Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, and the list goes on and on. In fact, part of the appeal of seeing this movie is just seeing who is in it, see if you could figure out who is who. Another highlight of Christopher Nolan movies is the soundtrack. He works with some of the best composers to make these emotional, impactful soundtracks. It's not just music he uses, it's sound effects itself. The sound editing in this is just absolutely amazing. And in fact, I would recommend seeing it in the theater, not necessarily for the visuals, because most of the movie is really dialogue. It's very dialogue heavy. It's people talking to each other. It's not really the visuals that you're going to get the impact on the big screen. It's the big theater speaker systems that you have. And that's where you get to hear the rumblings and the subwoofers, and it's just his use of placement of sound inside of a space behind you, beside you, in front of you, etc., and how he mixes it together. And it's not just the use of sound, but it's the lack of sound. He knows when to basically mute everything, and you just live in the moment what's going on in the screen. It is really, really well done. So if you can't tell, I am a huge fan of this film. And I'm trying to think of what negatives I would have. I guess maybe it would be, it does run 3 hours. And in the last hour, I did look at my watch a couple times, but I really couldn't afford to do that often because this feels like it's two movies. The first 2 hours is something, and the last hour is something else. And in this last hour, the story gets a little hard to follow because there's a lot of time jumps, so you really got to stay focused. But if you've watched any of Nolan's other movies, you understand you really got to pay attention at what's going on at the screen. This movie gets my highest marks. By far the best film I've seen in a very long time, and I highly recommend going to some sort of theater and seeing it for yourself.